Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we're going to talk about a few very interesting topics. One of them is related to an alleged UFO crash that occurred in Colorado in the early 1950s, as well as some debunker news that we need to go over. But we're going to start off with this alleged crash that happened in sometime in the early 1950s. Now, just recently, I picked up a copy of Magic Eyes Only by Ryan S. Wood. This is actually the expanded and updated second edition. Now, unfortunately for me, I did not pick up the original edition, so now I'm very happy to add it to my library because the original edition was going for a lot of money online because it was out of print. But there was, I've been going through this book. There's a lot of interesting stories in there, and some of them I never heard of before, including this one right here. This is something that happened in the early 1950s in Colorado, and it's an example, I believe, of potential newspaper men getting pressured by the military to not talk about what they know with regard to a UFO crash. Anyway, this was a report that was written by the late R.E. Thull in the year 2000. He ended up passing away in 2007, but in 2000 he wrote about what he knew about an alleged crash that occurred in sometime during the early 1950s. This guy, Thull, was a pilot for 50 years. He made a living flying for 42 of those 50 years. And he states here in this, this was a letter that was apparently written to Ryan Wood. It says here his first sighting happened in the early 1950s within 200 miles or so of Denver, Colorado. He writes, "It was mid-afternoon on a cloudless day when a quote, government employed, end quote, radio range operator sighted two UFOs. As he watched, one of them crashed on a nearby mountain. Then the remaining one circled the site for approximately 30 minutes. In those days, radio range operators were stationed across the country every 1 or 200 miles for the purpose of controlling air traffic. A commercial airliner passed that particular station shortly after the UFO crashed and made their required position report. Then the excited operator asked the flight crew to verify what he was watching. The flight crew did verify not the actual crash, but the circling craft. They too were quite excited and made a full report to the government-operated control tower at Denver. I was a co-pilot on another commercial aircraft in the vicinity at the time and was a silent witness to everything except the initial crash." So Thull was a witness. He also, in a different commercial airliner at the time, did see the second flying saucer, the one that didn't crash, circling around in this area. Now, all tower conversations are recorded, but somehow that one seems to have been misplaced. No information about it has ever been released, at least not to the public. The fact that this report was made to a government-controlled operations and was, quote, taken care of, end quote, so fast that it never made the newspapers, is definite proof in my mind and in many others that it was a government cover-up. Well, of course, it's proof that it was a government cover-up. They saw this. This pilot saw it. The co-pilot, Thull at the time, he was a co-pilot. He saw it. The pilot saw it. Pilots from other planes saw it. This radio tower operator, he saw it. So obviously it was covered up because we don't know about this. It was never made public by our government officials. If, in fact, this is a true story, which I have no reason to believe why it would be false, but then again, you never know. But regardless, there are UFO crashes and there are UFO retrievals, there are crash retrievals of these craft when they do come down. We do know that based on everything we know about Roswell as well as some other crashes. But anyway, continuing here, it says, "The surviving UFO was a disc-shaped silverish craft that went by us so fast that I couldn't begin to estimate its speed, but I watched it from about 45 degrees to our rear to about the same ahead of us, where it left in a vertical climb and went out of sight. I asked my captain if he wanted to make a report, but he declined. It's already been reported and I don't want to get involved." He was well aware of the problems that other pilots had after reporting UFO. So obviously, pilots at that time, they knew to keep their mouths shut. They knew the issues that they could face if they talked about these things. "There was no further discussion on this matter because in those days, a co-pilot's job was controlled by the captain, and I liked my job very much." But this is where the story takes a turn. It's you usually don't get this part of the stories when it comes to crash retrievals outside of the Roswell case, which we will talk about briefly. Anyway, it says here, I had a good friend, now deceased, who had a responsible position with one of the Denver newspapers at that time. That paper was known to monitor the Denver tower's frequency for any irregularity that could be newsworthy. A short time after the incident that I had just related, we were both at a party when I nonchalantly asked if he knew anything about the UFO that crashed. Only that the material it was made of couldn't be identified, he said. Then I asked why the story wasn't made public. He hesitated before answering, realizing that he shouldn't have said what he did, but said, it was a do not print item. I came right back with, what the hell is a do not print item? It was very obvious that he didn't want to continue the conversation, but after more hesitating, he told me a do not print item is something that the government thinks could panic the public. Then I really couldn't drop the subject and continued prodding. What could possibly be more upsetting to people than the news we get every day? And who decides what we should know or not know? You'd be surprised, was all he said. That was the response. So this newspaper man, whoever it was, we don't know if he was a reporter, if he was a publisher, if he was an editor, we don't know. It's not stated here. He never gave the guy's name. But this guy stated to him that the material of this craft could not be identified. It was probably wasn't of Earth. And that when he asked him about who makes this decision, and this guy said, "You'd be surprised." I guess we would be surprised, wouldn't we? But we probably wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some executives that are in control of these media empires, if they're not part of this cover-up as well. Anyway, continuing here, it says, then he would say no more, but I had to have more information and asked him where I might get it. My friend was normally an easygoing person, but he was getting upset with my questions and strongly advised me to forget all about it. Well, I have never forgotten it, and I never will, but I dropped the subject because I didn't want to jeopardize our friendship. So I found that story very interesting. Whether it's true or not, we'll never know. Our government will probably never tell us about it if it's true. But it's par for the course when you look at it and you stack it up against other alleged UFO crashes or known UFO crashes. I think that Roswell should actually be considered a known actual crash of an extraterrestrial craft based on all the evidence. The Air Force has never ever sufficiently debunked it. They never even came close to it based on all of the testimony from so many different people, people who have signed affidavits, people who are with the military, who knew that they were that they were part of a cover-up. There were so many different citizens of Roswell who were threatened. I mean, it's an endless list, and so there's no, as far as I'm concerned, Roswell should be considered at this point as an actual crash of an extraterrestrial vehicle of some kind, and recovery and cover-up. That's how it should be considered. Of course, it's not though. Unfortunately, but if this newspaper man or newspaper people were pressured at the time, somehow they might have found out about this. I mean, were they listening to the chatter over on the radio from the radio tower, and then they heard about this crash, so they rushed out to this site to see what was there, and when they get there, they find out some information. They see the crash maybe, but then are told, hey, you can't publish this. I mean, what went down? We really don't know. That's all the details of that story that we have. But it's nothing new. I mean, if you look at the Roswell crash incident, I mean, there were people there, news people that were threatened. A local radio station, for instance. This is from Roswell, The Ultimate Cold Case Closed by Thomas Carey and Donald Schmidt. On page 60, it says here, Roswell radio station KGFL had every intention of broadcasting the story of the century, which is why its staff escorted rancher Mac Brazel to the private home of the station's majority owner, Walt Whitmore Sr., and recorded Brazel's testimony late into the evening of Monday, July 7th, 1947. Yeah, after Brazel got back from showing Jesse Marcel the site of the debris field out on his ranch. After he got back that night, Walt Whitmore, the radio station owner, took Brazel back to his house because he wanted to get him to he wanted to record his statement for the show the next day. So that's what happened. They did this late night recording with Mac Brazel, and then it says here, At least that was their plan until the United States Army tracked their principal witness down and took custody of him early the next morning, just outside the radio station. The wire recording was just as quickly confiscated. So they basically took the recording that Whitmore had made the night before in his house of Mac Brazel talking about the crashed flying saucer, the debris on his field, and they confiscated that. Of course, as we all know, Brazel changed his story a couple days later after being in the custody of the United States Army. Continuing here, it says, efforts that same morning continued to disseminate preliminary news information to the local townspeople, but Washington was laser pointed on New Mexico. Even after Brazel's interview was taken, Whitmore attempted to get the story out on the Mutual Broadcasting wire feed, but was unable to get a call through. Within an hour, George Judd Roberts, minority owner at the station, received a long-distance person-to-person phone call from T.J. Slowey, the executive secretary of the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, who warned him that the matter involved national security. Should KGFL air any further reports about the incident or anything that Brazel had described on the wire recording the night before, they would lose their license to broadcast within 24 hours, all for exercising their freedom of the press. And Slowey knew about and specifically mentioned the wire recording of Brazel. Hardly a coincidence. So they actually figured, they knew that he made that wire recording after Brazel was taken into custody by the military. Obviously, he told him he just made this wire recording, and that's why the FCC contacted Roberts and told him, don't do it or you're going to lose your license. So they were threatened. And that wasn't enough. And if that wasn't enough to squelch the story, another call to KGFL came from Washington a few minutes later. Such a two-man press was obviously coordinated. It was from New Mexico Senator Dennis Chavez, who strongly urged the radio station to do as the FCC had cautioned. And Roberts asked him for his support on this. Say, hey, we want you to back us. What are you doing? But unfortunately, Chavez indicated that the decision was out of his hands. And so, with no recourse and the threat of the federal government putting them out of business, KGFL was forced to comply. So as we could see, there's been incidents over the years where news media is basically forced to keep quiet about these crashes when they find out about them. Basically, they're pressured into it, or who knows? They'll lose their broadcasting license. Who knows? Maybe even get thrown in jail. It's very upsetting, the whole thing, but. I don't know. I think that the story has could be true. You never know. It's only one witness. It's one of those. To me, it's like the Cape Girardeau, Missouri crash of 1941. There's really only. It's basically third-hand information, second-hand, third-hand information that we get for that, and that's pretty much it. There's not a lot to go on there, but there could be something to that one too. We just don't know. I think that the government has done an excellent job. This control group has done an excellent job of keeping things quiet about this reality for all these years. You have to wonder, I think that at the time when this started, when the cover-up started, I believe that they had it in their minds that we're going to figure out what these beings are up to. We're going to try to reverse engineer these craft and figure out how they tick. And I think they probably had it in their heads that it'll probably take a few years. Then we could come out and tell the public the truth. But I think after all these years, we're going on 80 years of this cover-up now, right? Around 80 years, give or take. We really don't know when it started. By 1947 for sure, but it could have been going on since 1941. We're not exactly sure. I think that, what happened is they just never figured it out. I think they're embarrassed at this point too. They would have to be, wouldn't they? I think there's a sense of embarrassment that they'd never be able to, they probably haven't been able to reverse engineer anything. Right? None of this stuff. They probably have figured nothing out. Maybe they were inspired by some of the wreckage that they've discovered, that they found at these crash sites, but that's about it. I don't think that they ever figured out exactly how these things work. If they had, I think we would have known about it by this point. But I think it's beyond now. It's gone on for so many years. They're just too afraid to tell the truth. They're too afraid of not only the reaction of people that there probably is some concern about that, how the world's going to react to the reality that we're not alone in this universe, but it's also going to make governments across the world look like they're a bunch of bums for keeping this to themselves for as long as they have. That's part of it. They're embarrassed. They've never been able to properly reverse engineer these things, and this is where we're at. But anyway, I thought that was a very interesting story to share about this alleged crash in Colorado of flying saucer. I recommend Magic Eyes Only if you're interested in UFO crash stories, because there's a lot of them in there. And I'm glad that this book has been reprinted. Anyway, I want to move on. I want to talk about something that happened on Wikipedia. Now, as many of you know, I recently did a podcast about Wikipedia and about how the guerrilla skepticism of Wikipedia organization is makes changes to. They swoop in as soon as you make a change. It seems like they within hours they'll swoop in and make changes. I was talking about my experience with one of the Wikipedia pages with regards to the report on unidentified flying objects, which was a book that was published in 1956. It was written by a former a former Air Force captain, Edward Ruppelt, who had left the Air Force. He retired, and then he wrote this book. He was actually the first head of Project Blue Book. And there were changes that I made in that. I made a slight change in it, and then one of these guerrilla skeptics swooped in, had to add in his 2 cents to make it sound like Majestic 12 documents are bogus and hoaxes and stuff like that. So, I let that go. I didn't try to make any changes to what this guy had put in there. I just, okay, that's fine. But then I went back in and I actually made some additional changes. There was actually some one paragraph in there that basically had false information. But now one of the one of those guerrilla skeptics, again, who goes by the name of Lucky Louie, that person has swooped in and took all my changes out and reverted it back to the way it used to be, and including by putting in that false information that was there previously. So I'm going to pull this up on screen so you can see it. So this is the Wikipedia page I'm talking about. It's the report on unidentified flying objects, and I'm logged in here as a user called Shark Fisherman. And if you check out, I'm going to check out the history here. We're going to go to the history. And I'm going to show you the changes that were just made. Okay, this is what Lucky Louie did. We could see what I had in there and what he has reverted it back to. Now, let's just pull it down here. Now, one of the changes I made was there was a statement in there saying that was discussing Majestic 12, and it says here that let me pull it up here a little bit more. And it was talking about Majestic 12 and the Twining memo and the Cutler Twining memo. It says here the Twining memo should not be confused with the Cutler Twining memo dated July 14th, 1954, included as part of the alleged Majestic 12 documents in 1985. Then I changed a sentence here where I changed it to the FBI declared those documents to be completely bogus, and some ufologists consider them to be an elaborate hoax. I changed the word that I had changed was it used to say many, and I changed it to some, because you can't. There's no many implies a lot, so I decided that I think that should just say some. I know that there's some ufologists out there who believe that that consider the MJ12 documents an elaborate hoax or bogus, right? And but there's no polling done. We know that some of them do. There's no polling has ever been done that implies that many. I mean, so I just decided that was just a small little change. But now Lucky Louie has reverted that back to the word many. But then the other change I made was the original version said that no, when they're talking about this, there was another section in this article that talked about the estimate of the situation, which was a document that was put forth in 1948 by the Project Sign, the first Air Force group to study UFOs. And Edward Ruppelt talked about this in his book, in his 1956 book. He saw a copy of this. And the original version said, no copy of this document or any other corroboration of Ruppelt's claim has been produced, right? And that was a false statement. That's wrong. And I actually changed it to no copy of this document has been produced, but Ruppelt's assertion that it existed was corroborated by Air Force Major Dewey Fournette, quote, who prepared an affidavit in the late 1950s that confirmed the document's existence. So I put that statement in there, and I had it cited. I took it from UFOs and the National Security State, Chronology of a Cover-Up, 1941 to 1973 by Richard Dolan. But unfortunately, Lucky Louie changed it back to have that false information, even though I stated that that was false. And in the notes, I stated that was a false, that information that was in there previously was false. But Lucky Louie took it upon himself to change it back to the way it was, which contains false information. Another aspect in my revision that I did was I had removed a comment in there from that was cited to Popular Mechanics. I just didn't think it was necessary. It said the Popular Mechanics comment said, and Popular Mechanics called the report probably more mythological than real, talking about the estimate of the situation, saying it was probably more mythological than real. Like I pointed out that's an unresearched comment. That's just someone's opinion. Why are we putting in opinions in here, like from a debunker who did no research on it, that just says probably more mythological than real, although we have people who stated that they saw it and that they handled it and that that was a real document. But they have to do this. This group, this guerrilla skeptics, they have to make the changes. And what was his reasoning? He says here, the reason that he restored this to the revision that was in there before was to undo the fringe push. There's basically calling this a fringe push. Let me tell you something, folks. There's nothing fringe about facts. The fact that another witness saw the estimate of the situation and actually prepared an affidavit for in the late 1950s to that effect. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, I'm not putting in there in crazy UFO theories or whatever they perceive I'm doing. I'm actually putting in a fact. I'm replacing false information with real information, with factual information. But Lucky Louie took that out. See, what the problem that I have here is that we have a problem with UFO debunkers. They're trying to rewrite history basically here with they're using false information. That's what's going on when you look at the changes that they just made, the newly revised version of that little article on Wikipedia. And that's only one little article about a UFO book, and that was written by the director of Project Blue Book, the former director of Project Blue Book. I mean, that's just one little grain of sand in a giant beach that I put changes in. But you see what they're doing. And now I was going to go in. I was very angry about this. Right? I was when this happened. When I saw that today, I was angry about it. I was going to go in, and I have the ability to revert it back to what I had. I have that ability. But after I consulted with Rob Heatherly of Military Witnesses, the UAP, and he told me don't do it, because if I do it, they have the ability, this group has the ability to kick me out, to boot me off as an editor at Wikipedia. And I don't think I wanted, I guess at first I was thinking to myself, you know what, I don't care. I want to go in and do the right thing. He's allowing false information in here, Lucky Louie, whoever he is, right? And I didn't care. I was going to do it, but I changed my mind. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let it simmer. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to talk about it on my next podcast. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just talking about it. And I'm very still angry about it. I don't like the idea that I know that there's false information in that article. But there's nothing if I do it, there's always the possibility that they'll have me banned, according to Rob Heatherly. As we all know, Rob Heatherly is the one who has been talking about this recently on a lot of different podcasts. He's done the research into this, and he has shown that there's this cabal. They actually call themselves a cabal of skeptics and debunkers who have joined forces. They have infiltrated Wikipedia. They've been there, according to Rob. They've been established in there since almost 20 years now, apparently. And it's hard to combat them. It's hard, if they don't like certain information, they're going to keep it out. It's like what Stanton Friedman said, and it's exactly what Stanton Friedman says. This Friedman in many of his publications, and this is taken from Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. He talks about debunkers. He has all different kinds of lists when he talks about debunkers. This list here is the the four basic rules of debunkerdom. Number one, what the public doesn't know, I am not going to tell them. Number two, don't bother me with the facts my mind is made up. Number three, if one can't attack the data, ignore it and attack the people instead. And four, do one's research by proclamation. Investigation is too much trouble, and most scientists and journalists won't know the difference anyway. Yeah, it makes you very angry that this is happening. It was happening throughout the lifetime of Stanton Friedman, and it's going to continue to happen until we get some kind of disclosure finally, one way or another, whether it's from the extraterrestrials themselves or from the government officials, the secret control group that is responsible for this cover-up. Until we get there, we're going to have to deal with these morons. I don't even know what... I think we need to come up with a new name for it. How about a moronosity? That's what we're dealing with here. A level of unbridled moronosity. I guess it's a shame we can't change Wikipedia. Actually, there's people in my family who contribute to Wikipedia. They like Wikipedia. You know what? I'm going to have a talk with them. I'm going to start talking to everybody. Don't contribute. Don't give Wikipedia any more money. If this is how they're going to handle things, we can't change falsehoods to facts in there. Then what's the point? I mean, these were minor alterations that I made to the story. It's still, anybody reading it, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't change much. I just changed a little bit there. But they want their viewpoints to be, they want people to share their viewpoints totally. They don't want any other information in there. They'll put comments and from debunkers like the late Philip Klass, that they take center stage in a lot of these UFO and extraterrestrial stories, and the stuff from Stanton Friedman and all these other people, all these other researchers over the years is usually completely, absolutely absent. I mean, it's like that ridiculous book that I just reviewed by Garrett Graff, his new UFO book. I mean, he didn't even resort or refer to Stanton Friedman's book about Majestic 12. He didn't even talk about it in his whole chapter devoted to Majestic 12. I mean, it's incredible. These debunkers don't want to do it. And here's the deal. As someone who knows that there's an extraterrestrial presence here, based on the experiences I had, it angers you so much when you hear these debunkers out there in the world, saying things, trying to make it sound goofy, try to say there's not enough evidence, even though there's tens of thousands of people who have had encounters with UFOs and or extraterrestrials over the years. It drives you nuts. You feel the anger. Like, I was watching an old CNN interview. They had a show, an old Larry King live episode that was televised on July 18th, 2008, and Dr. Bob Jacobs came on talking about his experience from 1964. I want you to check out this quick clip and hear what Bob Jacobs had to say at that point.
I was officer in charge of optical instrumentation at Vandenberg Air Force Base from 1963 to 66.
That's
our job
California?
was to photograph. That's California, so right there on the coast.
Right.
And our job was to photograph with high-speed instrumentation every missile launch from Vandenberg going down the test range. They wanted to find out if we could figure out a place to put a telescope where we could get a side view of the missile so that we could see all three stages of powered flight. So I went up to Big Sur, California, up on a U.S. Forest Service road on Anderson Peak, and I installed a telescopic sight up there. The Air Force flew in a huge catadioptric telescope from the Cape. It was built by Dr. Walter Manning at Boston University. They put the telescope up there, and with that thing, which had a focal length of 2,500 inches, we photographed an Atlas missile raising up out of the fog cover and flying down range. We got all three stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, and there were three people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16-millimeter camera and a screen set up. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera, on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as a decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile missile tracking radar, everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, an object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
Well, I don't understand. Why didn't you see this when you were shooting it?
Well, it was 600 to 800 miles away from us.
Oh, I got you.
The
And
only
they
reason-
confiscated,
the only thing you see Well, first of all, the Major Mansman said to me, "What was that? Were you guys screwing around up there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Then tell me what that was." And I said, "We got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant, you are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen."
So there you go. Bob Jacobs had this incident. You know, he was part of this. He was told to shut up and not talk about it. Now, later on in the show, they bring on a panel of other experts, right, including Robert Salas, who was one of the witnesses in Montana in 1967 when a UFO showed up and shut down, basically deactivated a whole bunch of about a dozen nuclear weapons. Nuclear missiles. But Bill Nye, the science guy, was also there. And you could see how angry Bob Jacobs gets at Bill Nye, the science guy, because Nye is acting like a complete idiot when it comes to this. I mean, he's a moron. I don't care how good he is in science, but the walk around with your eyes, through life with your eyes closed on all of this evidence, all of the testimony from different people, including someone like Bob Jacobs, you can understand. I understand completely why Bob Jacobs gets so angry in this little segment. Check it out.
Joining our panel is Bill Nye, the science guy. He's a scientist, engineer, best-selling author, and Emmy-winning television personality. He's, by the way, a member of the Skeptics Society and a fellow with the committee.
He did tell him, and he saw something. And coincidentally, the missile shut down.
Coincidentally, isn't that a weird coincidence?
Yeah, I've many times I've flipped a light switch and
what
you
if
hear
the
a
same,
siren. I mean,
what if the same thing happened a week earlier? Only this time, 10 missiles go down. A lot of security guards see the UFOs right above the
or 5 other missile bases
okay, so
on
why
repeated
we,
occasions.
Is that a coincidence too? I mean, you combine
50s,
the two, are
60s,
those two
70s, and
coincidences?
80s. There was over 100 people, Bill.
Well, in science, it's not
I wish Edgar Mitchell were here, but in any case, coaches
in the
among our
interest of
nuclear
time,
missile
in the
forces.
interest of time, Dr. Jacobs, he takes pictures, he comes back, they call him in, they show him the pictures of
I
this
saw it. I'm an
strange thing.
eyewitness.
He saw it.
I'm not talking about.
And they confiscated.
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
I'm not talking
I
about
wouldn't be
people who report
surprised.
to Hello?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mind if I speak, Mr. Comedian?
Go ahead.
I was there. I saw the film with my own eyes. I'm not lying. Why would I? I'm a university professor with a PhD and a lot of years of good, respectful research. So the guys from Ulster may not have seen the UFO, but they saw the results of it. I saw the damn thing on film with my own eyes, so don't call me a liar, and you weren't there. I was.
With all due respect, I'm not calling you a liar. It's just quite a step to say there was a film with remarkable images on it that the CIA confiscated.
Which I saw and which they did.
Yeah, which is quite a step from there to say it was definitely a spacecraft from another civilization. That's the leap that the skeptical community is reluctant to take.
Hey, pal, listen to me. I didn't say it was a spaceship from another civilization. I said it was something in the air that we couldn't identify. Therefore, it was an unidentified flying object. It was shaped like 2 saucers put together with a golf ball on top, and it fired a beam that we assumed was a plasma beam at a dummy warhead and knocked it out of space. Tell me what happened. Tell me who did that. Tell me in 1964 who had that technology, pal. Not us, and not the Russians, and nobody I know of. Nothing. There was nothing in our inventory that could possibly do that.
Let's do this other little thought experiment, everybody. Okay, let's say this has been going on since 1967, routinely, right? There's an old joke in broadcasting.
Are you going to do this with baking soda and vinegar, Bill?
Hold on. We're running out of time. If you're questioning what he's seen...
No, well, I'm questioning the conclusion that the technology did not exist in 1964 to produce images on film that the CIA would want to confiscate.
If I may.
Well, in 1964, you were trying to figure out what. In 1964, you were trying to figure out what girls were. I was in the service in a scientific capacity.
So, sir, you can attack me.
Get off your skeptic high horse, pal.
Well, it just doesn't.
You're attacking us. You're the one who's making ad hominem attacks and saying that's quite a step. You bet it's quite a step.
Bob Jacobs' anger here is completely justified. Completely justified. We need, that's unfortunate. Larry King, unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. It was his show on CNN when he used to bring those people on having debates about UFOs. That was great. That was great entertainment. That was great fun. I mean, it's a shame we don't really have that kind of stuff happening anymore on these networks. But yeah, I mean, this is what we're dealing with here, and it gets you angry as someone who knows the truth. I mean, I encountered an extraterrestrial being. There's no other explanation. I encountered one of these UFOs up close and personal. It was right there in front of me. I know it. And then you see someone with Bill Nye sitting there with his stupid bow tie on, talking like this on TV, and I feel like my head's going to explode. I get so angry. Even looking at this old footage, and these people are still acting like this. I mean, I have all this stuff going on in Congress now. It's even more obvious now than ever, right? You have all these people, both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, trying to pass legislation. They're getting pushback from people in the Pentagon and their puppets. It's obvious that they're covering this up. If they weren't covering it up, why didn't they allow that UAP Disclosure Act to go through, right? Why didn't they allow that? It's obvious that they're covering up. They just don't want the truth to be known. For various reasons, I'm sure. Yeah, and one more thing here I just want to add about this Bill Nye the Science Guy. He says, you see in the interview, he's there, it's such a leap. It's such a leap to say extraterrestrials. Why is it always such a leap? I mean, again, does this guy look at the stars at night? Doesn't he realize how vast the universe is? Why is it always such a leap to these guys? Why is it so fantastic? It shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be seen that fantastic. Obviously, there's other life out there, and obviously some of it has figured out how to travel deep through space and come here. What else does the answer? What else explains what Bob Jacobs was talking about? What else knocked that missile down? It had to be something extraterrestrial. Nobody else in the world had technology like that back then. Well, why are people running around with their heads up their butt like Bill Nye for all this time? Why can't they just admit the obvious here at this point? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about here. There was a post on UFO Twitter actually yesterday from Mike Colangelo talking about statements made by a former political reporter, Brian Bender, on a recent podcast called High Strange. And here's what Mike Colangelo says. He says, the game of telephone. Former Politico reporter Brian Bender thinks that David Grush's claims and everything post-2017 may be the result of broken telephone. He says the former government officials who believe that we have non-human craft and bodies may have fallen victim to a game of telephone because they have never seen the slam dunk evidence themselves and only heard it from others. But Brian Bender is still open to the possibility that the United States government has proof of non-humans hidden somewhere. This is why it's extremely important that we hear from folks with first-hand knowledge who have worked in the program, seen the non-human craft or bodies. If this is all true, this needs to happen. Then we need to see the proof, or we can skip the testimony and see the proof first. Both work. Well, let me just stop there. For one thing, I'm sure I talked about this Brian Bender before. I don't know if I was criticizing an article that he wrote or something he said on Twitter or what. I know I must have, because he has me blocked on Twitter. So I don't know what I did. I mean, I have almost 500 podcasts now on Spotify, and I have well over 600 videos on YouTube. So I'm somewhere along the line. The guy's name sounds familiar, so I must have some perceived indiscretion on my part must have occurred in his mind, and that's why I got blocked. But regardless, this is a stupid argument. I just got to point it out. Stupid. If you didn't have me blocked before, you would have me blocked after this, what I'm about to say. This is the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life, that all these people are talking on the telephone and they just con themselves into believing that there's a crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. That is absurd. Absolutely absurd. For one thing, Grush actually, in addition to meeting with about 40 different people who were working in these programs, right? In addition to that, he was provided corroboration through different documentations that he saw with his own eyes. And there's other stuff that he won't even talk about publicly. So what's he talking about here? What's he talking about here? And another thing, forget about Lou Elizondo and David Grush and all of these people we're talking about today that are whistleblowers, right, that we could look at as whistleblowers. Even before 2017, there was enough evidence out there based on the research of different UFO investigators like Leonard Stringfield, Stanton Friedman, Ryan Wood, Robert Wood, so many different people. The Thomas Carey, Donald Schmidt, Kevin Randall, the list goes on and on. And all of these people were researching this thing. We all knew that there was a cover-up long ago, well before Lou Elizondo, well before any of these people. It seems like they're focusing on this, like 2017, like these people somehow conned everyone in Congress and to believe in this. It's so ridiculous, their statements. These people, they need to do more research. They don't do it. I don't know what their problem is. Again, I think they've fallen victim to moronosity. You have to come up with new words to describe these idiots. And anyway, why is this guy so important? I don't understand. Like these tweets that somehow, like, somebody makes a statement, a former writer for Politico who doesn't believe in this stuff, but for some reason the comments enjoy some sort of minor vogue all over Twitter X for a few days. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why do we even listen to these morons? Anyway, so there you go. If you didn't have me blocked before, you definitely would have had me blocked now. Yeah, Bender, you're a moron. Right? That's what you are. That's how I feel. Anyway, moving on. I want to talk about some of the recent polls I conducted on Spotify. I want to catch up on them. For the episode, Scientists Should Study Animal Reactions to UFOs, I asked this question: what is your opinion on potential scientific studies that focus on the effects UFOs have on animals? So far, there's been 40 votes. 3 people, or 75%, say it's a waste of time, and 37 people, or 92.5%, say it's definitely worthwhile. Yeah, of course I agree with the majority. I don't know. I'm sure it's probably some. There's some people who hate my guts that have been paying attention to me. I know this, right? I know this for a fact, it seems like they don't want to talk about me publicly. They don't want someone. They don't want people to be paying attention to the stuff that I'm saying. They rather just pretend I don't exist for now. They're concerned of the day. Should the things I'm talking about, should the podcast that I have, they don't want it to go anywhere. They want it to stay pretty much buried like it is right now. I have like 6,500 followers on Spotify, and I have about 2,500 subscribers on YouTube. It's not that big of a show right now, right? I have a lot of loyal people who listen to me all the time and always give me comments, and I appreciate it very much. They always give me likes. I appreciate that very much. But these debunkers, some of them know of me, I can assure you, right? But they don't want to ever talk about me, don't want to mention me, because they're afraid, because they know, and they listen to someone like me, it upsets them because they know I'm speaking the truth, and they hate it. They hate the truth, and they hate someone like me. Okay, for the episode, The Psychology Behind Deniers of the Extraterrestrial Presence, I asked this question: can you handle the truth about the extraterrestrial presence, or would you rather the truth never be disclosed? So far, there are 46 votes. 2 people, or 4.3%, say keep it a secret forever, while 44 people, or 95.7%, say tell me everything. Probably a couple of debunkers out there who voted for keep it a secret forever. Probably Brian Bender and Mick West. They don't want the truth to come out, because then they're going to look like the liars and morons that they really are. Okay, for the episode, Taste the Pancakes of Extraterrestrials. By the way, I want to say, you know that was a play on. Just the day before I did this episode, I was watching an old Dracula movie with Christopher Lee in it, Taste the Blood of Dracula, so I decided to call this episode Taste the Pancakes of Extraterrestrials. Anyway, in that episode, I asked this question: do you believe Joe Simonton's alien pancake story? 49 votes so far. 17 people, or 34.7%, say no, while a majority, 32 people, or 65.3%, say yes. Of course, I have, as everyone already knows, I think that Simonton was telling the truth. I believe in his story. But hey, some people don't. Right? It's a crazy story. It's a difficult one to believe. But in fact, I think the first time I saw this story, years ago when I first saw it, I think I would have said no at that point. You had to look at it again. I had to read about it again. When you read about it, you get all the details, and you see, and you look at that film again, that old film that I showed on there. That guy seemed like he was sincere to me. He was not. He didn't show any signs of being a deceiver in there. If you had one of these people who are experts at body language looking at that, I think that they would agree that this guy was being truthful. That's my opinion. I didn't notice. There's some shows I watch out there. There's a show called the Behavior Panel, which is 4 experts at body language who they break down people. Are they telling the truth? Are they lying? I think if you put that on there and those guys looked at it, I think that they would come. That doesn't make me right. I could be wrong. They're the experts, right? But I think that they would come to the conclusion that Joe Simonton was being truthful during that interview. He did not look like he was being deceptive in any shape or form. You just don't see the signs are not there. The signs that these experts usually talk about, that they tell you to look for, they weren't there. But anyway, I want to say again, I want to remind people, yes, please, please like the videos if you like what I'm doing. Please like them on Spotify. You could like my channel. If you're using the app on your phone, I would appreciate that. If you like the channel, give me a good rating on there. That would be appreciated. And if you're on YouTube, please hit the like button on there. And so don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I also want to thank all the people recently who have made some contributions to my channel. I do appreciate that as well. I want to say thank you for joining me. Until next time.